in the United States and around the world, I'm Fareed Zakaria. We will start today's show with populism, power to the people. The concept swept Britain, then the United States. Is mainland Europe next? Will the populist wave continue to sweep the West? I have a terrific panel, including the New York Times' Tom Friedman. Then, privacy in the age of terror. Should the government see everything you do on the internet? That is the direction we're moving in. Also, the legacy of Barack Obama. That is the title of my next primetime CNN special. We will look at everything from race to guns, from Obamacare to the Iran deal. We had extraordinary access to the president and his team. I will give you a sneak preview, actually two, this hour.
You never know when history's calling.
But first, here's my take. As Democrats contemplate their losses in November's election, most have settled on a solution. They believe that the party needs more economically populist policies. But this misses an essential reality. Most people don't vote on the basis of policies. There is now mountains of excellent research by political scientists and psychologists on why people vote. The conclusion is clear. As Gabriel Lenz writes in his landmark 2012 book, Follow the Leader, voters don't choose between politicians based on policy stances. Rather, voters appear to adopt the policies that their favorite politicians prefer. And how do voters pick their favorite politicians? It turns out it's a gut decision that is more emotional than rational. Mostly it hinges on whether they identify with a politician in a social and psychological sense. The problem for the Democratic Party is not that its policies aren't progressive or populist enough. They're already progressive and substantially more populist than the Republican parties along almost every dimension. And yet, over the last decade, Republicans have swept through state houses, governor's mansions, the U.S. Congress, and now the White House. The Republican Party has been able to profit electorally at so many levels because it found a way to emotionally identify with working-class whites as they watched the country get transformed. Globalization, automation, immigration all generate enormous social change. Republicans signal that at a gut level they are uncomfortable with this change. They like America the way it was. Partly this is a matter of policy, on guns say, but mostly it's about identity and attachment conveyed through symbols and signals. In a perceptive essay in the Harvard Business Review, Joan Williams explains that working class people distrust and disdain professionals, and they view the Democratic Party as a party of professionals. Professionals in this view are overeducated urbanites with effete lifestyles, with things like organic food and vegan diets and yoga, who have jobs that are about manipulating words and numbers. On the other hand, Williams notes, working class people love the rich. For example, a real estate developer from Queens who actually builds stuff and retains all his basic appetites in food, decor, and such. So when Donald Trump posts a photograph of himself in his plane eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, he is saying to his base, I'm just like you, only with lots of money. If this emotional attachment is the key to getting people to vote for you, what does it mean for the Democrats? Well, the Democrats have advantages. They begin with a strong base of people who do identify with them. Professionals, working women, minorities, millennials. But Democrats need to reclaim a larger share of working class whites. To do this, they need to understand the politics of symbolism, not substance. Hillary Clinton's campaign, for instance, should have been centered around one simple theme, that she grew up middle class in a town outside of Chicago and lived in Arkansas for 2 decades. The subliminal message to working class whites would have been simply, I know you, I am you.
Let the word trust!
Bill Clinton's success has a lot to do with the fact that, brilliant as he is, he can always remind those voters he knows them. Once reassured, they're open to his policy ideas. Barack Obama is a singularly charismatic politician, but he might have made Democrats forget that the 3 Democrats elected to the White House prior to his election all came from the rural South. They knew that world. They were off it. So with these insights in mind on the campaign trail, Perhaps Clinton and the Democrats should have rallied less with Beyonce and Jay-Z and more with, say, George Strait. And if you don't know who that is, that's part of the problem. For more, go to cnn.com/Fareed and read my Washington Post column this week. And let's get started. Which surprised much of the world. Then came Donald Trump's astonishing electoral victory in the United States. Will upcoming elections in Europe be the third shock to the system? Let me bring in a great panel to discuss the rise of populism. Thomas Friedman is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author who has a brand new book out, Thank You for Being Late, An Optimist's Guide to Thriving in the Age of Accelerations. He is also, of course, a New York Times columnist. Also in the Times this weekend is a great piece by my next guest, Ian Baruma. It's called The End of the Anglo-American Order. He is a professor at Bard College. Melissa Bell is CNN's Paris correspondent. Before that, she was the International Affairs editor at France 24. And Nadia Ubanati teaches politics at Columbia University. Welcome to you all. Ian, at the end of the Cold War, it seemed as though we had arrived at this kind of consensus that Francis Fukuyama called the end of history, and that the big political debates were settled, and now we see this wave of change. So what happened?
Well, the end of the Cold War happened in the first place, and it was when America's prestige probably was at its height. And everybody thought, as you say, that the end of history was there. I think one reason for this wave of right-wing populism all over the world is not just the rise of the right, it's also the demise of the left. But the social democratic left has lost its voice everywhere, all the way from Japan to the Netherlands. And that had something to do with the end of the Cold War, because the fall of the Soviet Empire, which we all applauded, in many ways also tainted everything else to do with the left, and it undercut the kind of opposition we now need against this right-wing populism.
What I'm struck by, Tom, is everywhere you see it, you see immigration. And that was, of course, Trump's first issue.
Well, I think that we're in the middle of this, what I arguably book, three accelerations, and one in technology, one in globalization, and one in climate. And what it's doing is they're all feeding together. So more climate change drives more immigration. I was just in Africa a couple of months ago. You can trace what's going on in Senegal. Small-scale farming is collapsing because of climate change and population growth. Technology gives people cell phones where they can hit the road. WhatsApp allows them to create huge smuggler networks. And they don't want a Live Aid concert from Europe. They want to come to Europe, all right? And so this is now creating a giant stream of people. We think this is about the Middle East, Syria, and Afghanistan. It's not. This is an African phenomenon. They're coming from the arid zones of Africa.
3/4 of immigration in Europe is from Africa.
And it's not going to stop. And so I think we're just at the beginning of it. So what it's doing is it's really together, this surge in acceleration, technology, climate change, and globalization. Think about it. I go to the grocery store now in my hometown, whether it's in Italy or France or in America. There's someone speaking different language there, and they're wearing a head covering that's not a baseball cap. Okay? And so I feel like it's a little odd to me. Then you go to the men's room, and there's someone who actually looks like a different gender there. I happen to embrace all of that. I'm so glad we have those rights, but that came really fast for a lot of people. Then they go to work, and now there's a robot sitting next to me, and he seems to be studying my job. And so if you think of the things that anchor us in the world, our community and our work, whether it's in Italy or France or in America, they're both being disrupted, and there are a lot of people today feeling unmoored.
So if Tom is right in this isn't going to stop, and particularly the flow of people isn't going to stop, Melissa, what it seems to me is also the backlash isn't going to stop. And you see it in France, where François Fillon, this conservative politician, seems to have essentially won their primary, and it was basically by outflanking everybody on immigration.
Immigration was absolutely the heart of what he was saying, but fundamentally he is a sign of rupture. He's not a populist, and it was expected until about 2 weeks ago, when he suddenly came from nowhere to win this primary, that Marine Le Pen would be the next in that row that you set out at the beginning of the program, Fareed. In fact, by this very clever message that he sent, not as a populist, he's a Thatcherite on economic matters. He wants rupture, but enough rupture to answer that profound need for change. And there are sort of dog whistle messages that he also sends out on things like immigration. He's a Catholic, he's a social conservative, and represents a real backlash, a return to those values that many people still hold dear, even if the sort of elites in Paris had long imagined that they've been forgotten. And I think there is that sense that we'd stopped paying attention, I think, to the kind of things you were just talking about, the fears that people have.
Nostalgia is a large part of this. Make America great again. The British reclaiming their sovereignty. Somehow it's all about going back to the way things were in some idealized way.
Yes, and the people who have that nostalgia, of course, are often people who are not in their daily lives confronted by the immigrants or people, strange people in men's rooms. And I mean, a lot of the voters behind Brexit and Trump and other populist leaders, whether it's racial, ethnic or national, the ideas.
Also, when there are a phenomenon of anti-immigration movements, like in Northeast Italy recently in small towns, they never see societies, which we get directly to the media without professional media producers, and we become the media producer. And these connections between us and reality through our means of mediation and communication makes us post-truth, all of us. So it's a situation in which we created the truth in which we then believe and we are scared of.
Well, we search through these new media forms for the news that we want to hear, that scares us about these immigrants, and that's what Breitbart does so much of the time. All right, when we come back, we will talk about the winner of many of these elections around the world, and that appears to be the decidedly undemocratic leader of Russia. Why is Vladimir Putin doing so well out of all this? We'll try to answer that when we come back.